The arena was buzzing. Every seat in Madison Square Garden was filled with people teetering on the edge of excitement and anxiety. This was no ordinary night. The Knicks were battling the Celtics in Game 5 of a hotly contested playoff series. Every minute counted. Every possession carried the weight of dreams built over months. You could feel the tension in the air, thick and unrelenting. The Garden hadn't been this loud since the 90s, and Josh Hart was right in the middle of it all. He'd been playing with unmatched intensity, the kind of hunger that doesn't fade after a timeout or slow after a foul. This wasn't just about stats or a highlight reel. This was about grit, about heart. Ironically fitting for a man whose last name symbolizes the very thing he poured into every play. The Knicks needed a boost, a shift in momentum, and Hart took it upon himself to answer that call. With 3:30 left in the opening frame, he sized up the defense and made his move. The ball hit the hardwood with a thunderous rhythm as he dribbled past the top of the key, lowered his shoulder, and exploded toward the rim. He saw an opening. The lane parted just enough for him to slip through like a bolt of lightning, but lurking in the paint was Boston's towering Luke Kornet. Kornet stepped in with a long reach, trying to block Hart's path, and that's when it happened. As Hart elevated, Kornet extended his arms. In the collision that followed, Kornet's forearm struck Hart directly above the left eyebrow, hard. The sound wasn't a usual slap or a light foul. It was heavier, bone on bone. Hart's body twisted midair from the blow, and he landed awkwardly on the floor, his hands immediately reaching for his face. A hush fell over the crowd, not silence, but that eerie kind of collective concern that only comes when something goes wrong. Blood was visible right away. It wasn't just a cut. It was a deep laceration, and it began flowing immediately, dark red and fast. The white of Hart's Knicks jersey quickly became a canvas for the injury. Drops of blood splattered down his chest and onto the hardwood. There's something about seeing a player bleed that changes the tone of a game. It reminds you that beneath the million-dollar contracts and massive arenas, these are human beings, flesh and blood, fighting for glory, for pride, for a win. Hart sat up, dizzy but composed, pressing a towel to the gash as team trainers ran onto the court. His face twisted not in fear, but in frustration. He wasn't worried about the blood. He was worried about the clock ticking by while he was stuck on the sideline. He wanted to get up and keep playing. The trainers led him to the bench, where they worked quickly, hands moving in a blur, cleansing the wound, gauging the depth, applying pressure. The cut was just above the eyebrow, dangerously close to the eye, and it was still bleeding steadily. For a moment, you could see the internal conflict in Hart's face. Should I sit? Should I keep going? But even before the staff finished wrapping the bandage, Hart was already rising to his feet, motioning to the coach that he was good to go, and then came the free throws. He returned to the court with gauze taped to his eyebrow, stained faintly red, as the crowd gave him a thunderous ovation. It wasn't just applause, it was admiration, respect. Every fan in the Garden rose to their feet. Even Celtics fans had to pause and absorb the raw intensity of the moment. Josh Hart had just taken a brutal hit, was still actively bleeding, and was stepping back onto the line to take two of the most pressure-laden free throws in playoff basketball. He took a breath. The ball bounced once, twice, then swish. First one in. No hesitation. Second one. Same focus. Same deadly calm. Swish again. 2 points on the board, a standing ovation, and one blood-soaked warrior. But the story didn't end there. Most players might take a rest after that kind of hit. Hart didn't. He went right back on defense, his stance low, his eyes locked in, despite one of them still blinking away the sting of blood and sweat. He wasn't going to let a facial wound dictate the rest of the game. And as the minutes ticked on, his presence on the court became a rallying force. The Knicks surged with renewed energy. They weren't just playing for the scoreboard now. They were playing for their guy. The one who bled for them. Literally. Hart grabbed rebounds over bigger players, dove for loose balls that looked out of reach, and even took another charge that sent him tumbling again. The man was fearless. By halftime, he had racked up impressive numbers, not in points but in hustle stats. The ones that don't always get measured. Tips, saves, screens, grit. He was the living, breathing engine of the Knicks, and everyone watching could see it. Back in the locker room during halftime, the medical team took a closer look. They offered to stitch him up properly, suggesting that maybe he should consider sitting out the second half to avoid worsening the cut. Hart reportedly shook his head and said, "Tape it up, I'm going back out." That was that. No debate, no hesitation, just a fierce love for the game and a refusal to be sidelined. The second half was a war zone. Both teams knew what was on the line. The Celtics were trying to capitalize on their offensive rhythm, but Hart was relentless. Every possession they tried to exploit him, thinking he might slow down because of the wound, was met with steel. If anything, he seemed more energized. The crowd fed off him. The team fed off him. And the atmosphere in the Garden turned into something mythical. One moment stood out in the third quarter. A fast break started with Hart stealing a lazy pass, near half court. He bolted toward the rim, despite trailing defenders. As he leapt for the finish, you could see the tape above his eye flutter slightly from the momentum. He took the hit mid-air, finished the layup, and came down strong. No. Foul call, but the bucket counted. The Garden exploded. Fans were screaming, fists in the air, echoing Hart's name. Josh Hart! Josh Hart! On the bench, even the Knicks coaching staff looked in awe. This wasn't just hustle. This was something more. This was the manifestation of will, of character, of pure fire. He had become more than just a player in that moment. He had become a symbol. As the fourth quarter began, the Knicks were down by 5. Every possession was tighter. Tension peaked. Hart checked back in with 9 minutes left, wiping at his brow with the back of his wrist, the bandage now frayed and worn. He didn't care. The trainers were hesitant, watching him closely, but he gave them a look that said, "Don't pull me now." He played the rest of the game without asking out once. On defense, he boxed out players taller and heavier. On offense, he made the unselfish passes, set the hardest screens, and chased down long rebounds like the game depended on it. Because it did. With just under a minute remaining, the Knicks were down by 2. The play wasn't drawn up for him, but Hart found himself with the ball at the top of the key after a broken pass. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He dribbled, stepped back behind the arc, and with a deep breath, launched it. The ball sailed through the air in slow motion, the arena dead silent for a second. Then erupted. 3-pointer. Knicks up by 1. Josh Hart had done it. The final seconds played out with adrenaline and chaos. The Knicks held their ground. The defense smothered the Celtics. The final buzzer rang. Knicks win. The team mobbed Hart. He was buried beneath high fives, chest bumps, and bear hugs. But through it all, you could still see the same bandage, barely, holding together, proof of what he had gone through to help them get there. In the post-game interview, Hart downplayed the moment. "It's just basketball," he said. "Sometimes you get hit. You get back up. That's what this team does. That's what New York is about." Reporters noted the dried blood that still painted the edge of his eyebrow and the smile that seemed to carry no regret, only pride. That night, social media exploded. Clips of the hit, the blood, the free throws, the dagger 3, it all went viral. Fans called him a warrior, a legend in the making. Former players chimed in with praise. And sports shows opened the next morning with segments devoted entirely to Josh Hart's heroics.